I just think that we can define things in our own terms without the sense of a stereotype and allow ourselves to just be ourselves. And I think the stronger we find this inner strength of who we are, the stronger really our sense of our voice, our advocacy, our clarity of our thinking, what's in our heart, our intentions, and the more we're focused around helping people. So it's again the diverse backgrounds that each of us bring that makes humanity so special and rich.
I'm just letting that land. Oh, that felt so good.
Sheila Lirio Marcelo is a
CEO and
co-founder of Ohai.ai.
and she had previously launched
Care.com, helping millions of people.
connecting with caregivers.
And yes, it's easy to burn out, but I guess for me, the emphasis is allowing us the freedom of what's up here so that we can get to here, so that we can serve and love others.
You know, it's not often we get to talk to someone who is truly a tech innovator and a community leader at the same time. But today's guest truly brings a lifetime of experience, of knowledge, and wisdom from not just building one, two, but over and over again, so many different projects, and truly defining what it means to be a leader. Welcome back to Big Asian Energy. My name is John Wang. I'm your friend, and today I am talking to an incredible guest, Sheila Lirio Marcelo, who is not only one of the co-founders of the Asian American Foundation, she is also the co-founder and CEO of Ohai.ai. She had previously launched Care.com, which has helped so many millions of people get the support that they need and becoming one of the world's largest online marketplaces when it comes to connecting families with caregivers. Her background and story is absolutely inspirational. She moved to the US from the Philippines as a child and became a mom during college. And yet in her journey, she has grown businesses that have served 45 million users, creating support for so many individuals. And I am just personally so incredibly excited to chat with her. So welcome to the show, Sheila.
Thank you, John. Super exciting to be here. What an honor. And thank you for that amazing intro. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's all true. This is something, I mean, there's so many different honors and accolades I had to choose from, including, Forbes 50, over 50 of Fortune's top 10 women entrepreneurs. You took a company and got it acquired for nearly $500 million. I mean, you have done so many different things across your life. My first question really is, how do you describe yourself when you're at a party? When someone asks, when you shake someone's hand, I mean, how do you talk about who you are?
I think the first thing lately I've been saying is I'm a grandmother.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Her name is Cecilia. We call her Cece. She's super cute. And then, I go right into being a mom, 2 kids, and I've just been a serial entrepreneur, really solving a lot of pain points for families throughout my career.
Yeah. Do you mind just giving us a quick kind of roundup of how that journey has looked? I mean, how did you first get into this? There's so many terms that I'm so curious about, like the fact that you had a platform where you talk about being the chief household officer. So I feel like you know a lot about what it means to create communities and families. How did you get here?
Yeah. Well, so John, born and raised in the Philippines, and then I came to the U.S. for college, and we had designated professions in our family, being Asian stereotypes around, 6 of us. There was a doctor, a dentist, engineer, accountant, and I was supposed to be the lawyer. And
Covering all the bases.
I went to a women's college, Mount Holyoke, and then I got pregnant between my sophomore and junior year. I then ended up getting into Harvard Law School and then got pregnant again my last year of the graduate program. I did my JD MBA at Harvard. And then when I graduated with grad school, I worked at a startup and my dad fell ill. So I was sandwiched, what they would call, between childcare and senior care. And at the time when I was in business school, I wrote a business plan that was really focused around real estate marketplaces. I called it Metromove, which is sort of like a modern Zillow today. But then I decided, because I'd been studying marketplaces and given my own proximity to the care problem, I decided instead that the vision I had was really a marketplace for care. And so this was Back then that I started to think about it when my father fell ill. And this was at the time when I was working in another family company called You Promise that helped families save money for college. And so really being proximate to the issues of my personal problems, juggling childcare and senior care. And at the same time, my background of studying internet marketplaces. And then I ended up working at a job board called theladders.com. And that combination, if you think about it, care.com is helping families look for caregivers. And it's the combination of a marketplace and looking for jobs for caregivers. And so started that in 2006, scaled it, took it public in 2014, exited in 2020. I took a couple years off and then started a new company in the care space called Ohai.ai. And so I've been a serial entrepreneur. I will say that in between, I helped co-found another company that we launched, not really a company, a nonprofit, because during the sabbatical in 2020 and 2021, we were at the height of Asian hate with the pandemic being labeled sort of like the China virus that started to really escalate into hate issues, the killings in Atlanta, in the nail salon. So we decided as a group of us to really co-found the Asian American Foundation. So yet again, started to launch a new organization in between care.com and Ohai. And now Ohai.ai is really helping families again solve the mental load and really building a personal assistant for their everyday needs. So I've just been solving problems that families experience. And of course, TAF is near and dear to me. And that's really about helping, especially our community, on how we get a sense of belonging, addressing safety, as well as prosperity for our community.
I love that. What a powerful journey. Thank you for sharing. I want to
Sure.
talk a little bit more about TAF because, this being Big Asian Energy, this is our
Yeah,
biggest topic is Asian
yeah.
American experiences, especially in leadership. May I ask how, when you first started this idea, how did that come to form? How did you take that live?
Oh, you mean the Asian American Foundation?
Yeah.
What had happened was Jonathan Greenblatt of ADL had been tracking, because at the ADL they track a lot of hate crimes, and they were monitoring. A lot of them had actually come up with data around incidences of hate towards Asians. He brought it to a group of corporate leaders, Lee Lu of Himalaya Capital, Joe Tsai, his background with the Brooklyn Nets, and Alibaba, Jerry Yang, the founder of Yahoo, Joe Bay, the founder of KKR, and Peng Zhao. And the group of gentlemen got together and really started to brainstorm this I think it was like spring of 2021. Might have been spring of 2020. And then spring of 2020. And then November, or actually around that spring, shortly after their first meetings, I got an outreach from them around whether I was interested, and I had just sold care.com. And I said, I'm supposed to be on sabbatical. And I also didn't think it made sense for me to join a nonprofit board that was about advocacy, because I didn't really have a political background. And I thought, maybe I don't do this. Instead, I'm happy to help in any way I can, make intros for other board members. But they came a calling again, November 2020. And at that point, I'd been like 8-9 months after I sold care, and started really to talk to them seriously. And then, of course, the women that were murdered in Atlanta just really hit me, and my own personal proximate issues that my parents were walking with us. And at the time, we lived in Weston, Mass. And, a pickup had driven by, and people yelled, "Go home." And there are just lots of these little incidences that you call them little, but they really hit you. Um, and my parents didn't feel safe walking outside during the pandemic. And I think all of that really spoke to me at the time. And I was on sabbatical and thought, maybe this is a calling that I have to see if I could help out. And then I did. I jumped in around November 2020, and then we launched in 2021 quickly that May with a group of us, really co-founded the Asian American Foundation. And then I helped out because the board asked me at the time, given my background in consumer marketing and in also societal issues, to help out on a campaign called See Us Unite. And then we launched that as a campaign across the country, really celebrating our heritage and our pride around Asian American representation and us coming together. So that was a combination of actually a pretty big launch for both the organization as well as the campaign.
I love that. I understand that there's a campaign called Asian Plus American. Can you tell me a
That's right.
little bit about that one?
Yeah, so after CS Unite, we decided and we supported a bunch of different campaigns, Stop AAPI Hate, and different initiatives during that time. And then a couple years later, we started working. We also worked with Wyden Kennedy, who did a phenomenal job on CS Unite and worked with a team and a pretty expansive team of over 30 Asian American talent in Wyden Kennedy. And I had a close relationship with the firm and then asked them again to say, could they help us as we think about narrative change? And I had co-chaired an initiative around narrative change with Joe Tsai. And so, in partnership, we started working with Wyden Kennedy and the team internal to TAF. And Wyden came up with Asian Plus American. I have to say, John, when I first looked at the campaign a couple years ago and they showed it to me, it brought me to tears because the idea was Asian dash Americans felt the dash felt a little bit divisive,
Hmm.
right? Like we were taking something away. And they did something so simple that they turned that minus sign into a plus sign. And that what it represented was that we, as any individuals, any human being, that we are comprised of more of who we are, and our diverse backgrounds. And so I saw it and I just fell in love with it. And actually, I said to them, this is bigger than just Asian plus American. This is for all Americans. And this is
Hmm.
what our country defines as each and an individual and every one of us. I'm sure that I've got a blend of Chinese. I've got a blend of I know for a fact I have a blend of Spanish, European, Filipino, so for me, we're all a mixture. And now my granddaughter Cece is part Canadian, part Irish, and part Filipino American. And so for me, it just meant so much personally that it really did bring me to tears. And I started to realize that we did this launch survey that actually showed that about a quarter of Asian Americans don't feel that they belong, that their identity is actually acknowledged, and they just don't feel that. And so for us, this narrative change gave a sense of you could be your whole self and really represent it. Became a social media campaign. So we're just super excited about the campaign now. It launched last July. We're doing a big push again this upcoming May. We've had celebrities across the country really represent and be part of this to just share their story of
Hmm.
saying, what makes you proud to be part of this Plus campaign? What makes you more?
I love that question of what makes you more. That hits so personally. I think yeah, because when we grow up as, Asian American, Asian Canadian, or whatever that hyphenation is, it's a debated term, right? It's like the hyphenated term.
Right.
It it talks about how we are different, but it
There.
doesn't talk about how the layers of who we are actually makes us more, and it doesn't take away, right? Um, I was having a conversation recently and with somebody talking about the difference between Asian American and other Asian diaspora communities. And one thing that they pointed out was that the American identity can be so powerful that it
Yes.
sometimes can be overwhelming. It starts to subsume our other identities. So,
Well,
mhm,
what's an interesting one is, the American identity is all of it, which, so if we tend to want to change our names, we hide the food that we eat,
mhm,
and we replace it with other things. And the reality is, it is a blend of entirely who we are, and that
mhm,
is all American. Um,
mm,
that's what makes it beautiful. And so I actually think it's less that the power of American overshadows being Asian. To me, being Asian American is a composite of both, right? That's the
mm,
beauty of more, saying it is who we are. And the history in this country, that the Chinese Americans laid down the railroads and they were here for a very long time. And so
mhm,
they've been part of our history, and, a Japanese that we put in camps were here. They've been Americans for a very long time. So um, we are just truly part of this country.
mm,
And it's been something that's just so emotional for me,
mm,
especially now, not just raising our boys here who are Asian Americans, but now, as I said, my granddaughter, and making sure that she feels acknowledged, she feels seen, and she has a voice at the table.
I love that. It's such a powerful thing when we start to shift from assimilation to integration, to identify that we are so much more than just the stereotypes of our visibility. I feel like one of the biggest things that Asian plus American. I love the campaign. I was actually, funny enough, I was actually speaking at the advertising agency you speak of. I was actually speaking at their event recently, and I got to meet some of their creatives, and we had this deep conversation. We had this chat about what does this new identity of, being Asian American mean, and beyond representation. And I'm curious to hear, since you've kind of stepped into this role, has there been a shift in how you view our community in the US?
It's interesting. I don't view it as new. I think it's just been around, and I think what I tend to really focus on a sense of learning and curiosity, that we're made up over 75 different ethnic backgrounds of the combination. How do we learn about each other, and really have an appreciation for that? So I didn't presume, just because I'm Filipino American, that that's the representation of Asian American, that we are all quite different, right? And so what was interesting about the height of Asian hate is to be labeled and to be viewed, where I would walk and somebody would try and poke fun at me, in sort of pretending to speak Chinese, and I'm not Chinese American. I have many
People
friends
did
who are
that, like on the street?
on the streets. Yeah, it's absolutely, and
Oh
and
my
and
gosh.
and it still happens. I know oftentimes somebody will say I look either Chinese American or Korean American.
Oh.
So we tend to jump into that, and whether you are Caucasian American and somebody just assumes the difference between were you Irish, were you Brit, or were you Australian, or were you German, or were you, and so it's again the diverse backgrounds that each of us bring that makes humanity so special and rich, right? And
Mm.
that's how we kind of learn from each other. So I don't think this is anything new in
Mhm.
our identity. I think that narrative change is truly the sense that, taking great pride in who we are and being able to openly discuss it and
Mhm.
providing a platform for each other to honor each other.
I love that. In particular, the focal point of TAF has been to really platform other Asian Americans. I
That's right.
actually love the studies that you have conducted. That particular study about belonging. I remember when I was doing research for my book, that was one of the that you TAF was one of the websites that I would go to visit and look at these studies. So it is creating a ripple effect. I think possibly so many other people are going to get affected by the work that you do. When I look at your journey, however, what I find so interesting is that you do not follow the stereotypes of the model minority. I mean, in every single way. I mean, you're so open. You talk about how you juggle all these different responsibilities and pressures and everything like that. But you also are a leader very much in all the ways that defy what people's
You're,
perceptions are. How
you're
did you become such a strong, powerful voice for yourself? How do you speak up, in other words?
I can't say, it's been an easy journey. I recall when I was younger, I would get literally my whole entire head would be covered in sweat when I would public speak, and I was just super nervous. So obviously, it has taken a sense of inner work, practice, and starting to realize that so much of the voice really comes from a sense of love and a
Hmm.
sense of, you know, what can I do with, and be grateful for the opportunities I've had, to really make a difference and an impact in the
Mm.
world. And so, how do I find that overall purpose to actually, shine my light as much as I can on other people, to help them? And so, I just feel whether it was CARE, whether it's Ohai, whether it's TAF, I feel like, and this really, John, for me hit home. When I thought about when I was on sabbatical, as I said to you, I was really wondering, like, what why would I help co-found TAF? And I just something happened during the care.com days where I think it was around year 5. I joined, the Aspen Crown Fellowship Program. It was a leadership program where we got selected, 20 of us, and really debated and had a deep discussions about how do we create a good society, even with diverse, political backgrounds, diverse geographical backgrounds, diverse careers and industries. How did we come together and debated and discussed a sense of how would we create a good society? And actually, that program, when I was running care.com, was what convinced me to actually start practicing my voice for public speaking. Because I said, I had thoughts about this of that the advocacy role to really fight for the right of caregivers to ensure that they were paid above minimum wage, that they were treated right. We became one of the largest gig economy platforms, even before Uber, to treat caregivers well. And then I started working with Ai Pu, who I love, who's a very prominent Asian American fighting for caregivers. And we started, she taught me the phrase, care is the work that makes all work possible. And I think as I came into this voice, fighting for the rights of caregivers and especially families on the cost of care, I started to take us, to look at, well, what is my role for our community being Asian American? Can I play a similar role to role model, find ways that my leadership can cast a light on other people's journeys and ways in which we can inspire each other? And so that's really what led me to rethink joining the co-founders of TAF to do this for our community. And it's been one of the biggest honors and privilege of my life to have done this work.
I love that. I have a hard time imagining you as being a shy public speaker. You have such an aura. You exude leadership.
Oh, no. So definitely. And then, in the early days when you're finding your voice in your public speaking, a large part of it is, a conscious, you're conscious of like, how am I perceived? I think I've just really started to focus what's in my heart and how do I want to help people? And I think the more I became comfortable and it was about using your voice as if you're having coffee with a friend. How would you help a friend that you love? And so I started to realize that was something that could really help people.
I mean, that is such a beautiful intention and message. And I think that's what a beautiful place to come from. Because when we're focused on helping others, we do feel that self-conscious, right? Because our full attention is on the other person and how do we contribute. That could also, of course, lead to burnout, which is something I feel like you are very experienced in talking about.
Yes,
let's jump in there. How do we help our community, or how do we help leaders help their community without hitting that burnout, without constantly feeling like they have to give and give and give and hold on to that guilt and pressure to always overperform?
I think, part of the inner work that I've done is really to invest. You get so much more energy from your source and your internal source to really help others if you start by loving yourself. And actually ties back to the Plus campaign, right? To have a sense of understanding who you are, what your strengths are, what your purpose in life is, to have that level of clarity. And I think that helps a lot. And to be clear that you love yourself, that you feel enough. And then when you start to really understand that source of love for yourself, you start clearing your brain of worrying about what to say, how to impress, to be overall performative, because actually what takes over a lot of your body, your heart, and your brain, really your brain, your mind, is about focusing on others. And it just suddenly shifts for you. And when that shift happens, the energy that you have to suddenly come up with solutions and the clarity and working on collaboration instead of this sense of it's all you and it's all dependent on you that really tires you out, right? Because there's this pressure that you're like, it's all got to come from me. It's got to be perfect. And it's got to be, when you start to realize that you're trying to serve others, it's a pretty big task because you're trying to help a lot of people. That's the co-founders of TAF. Like you come together and you collaborate more. And collaboration is the power of community to really strengthen each other and do so much more work around impact. And so that real shift for me has happened on this entire leadership journey. And it didn't happen overnight. I can say that when I was younger, I wasn't a great leader. In fact, what led me into meditation in my 20s is I landed in a hospital with too much stress. And because I was the breadwinner, I started meditating first to manage stress. Then I kept meditation to be a better leader in terms of communicating and understanding people's needs. And then in this third chapter of meditation, I started to do a lot more inner work about loving myself and finding the energy, especially now I'm turning 55 this week, is really now pushing the energy around from within and out, right? And where am I getting that as I age? There's a great book by Arthur Brooks called Strength to Strength, and really finding this sense of this next chapter in life. So just been doing the work, being honest about it. And yes, it's easy to burn out, but I guess for me, the emphasis is it's pretty straightforward. The farthest journey is from your head to your heart. It's really understanding who you are, what matters. And then once you find and I always do this move for the people I mentor. It's like starts this way and then out. It's like powerful energy. Yeah. Right.
I don't know if you could tell, those who are watching it on video, I am trying to do the same practice. Because if you are on video, you are seeing that Sheila does not look 55. So whatever inner work she is doing is definitely working. I want to hear more about this inner work because you mentioned meditation. Were there anything else that you did in this that worked on you internally that helped you be a better leader, a better performer, or just help you be better connecting with who you are?
Yeah. Journaling, daily gratitude practices, um, you know, really gives you an overall sense, and just recently I just celebrated, this week is my coming birthday, but I did my big 55th birthday party recently in New York. And I decided that celebrating my birthday was actually inviting and thanking a lot of the people that I love. And that it was really focused on gratefulness. And a good friend of mine, Stephanie Telenis, sent me a podcast that Peter Attia just did and interviewed an 85-year-old gentleman called Walter Green. And my friend said, it sounded like what this guy was talking about. To say it now is this sense of gratitude that has to come from within. And she said, what you did to your birthday sounds like what this guy has been actually doing. I just felt this intuitive sense, John, that at this age, as my parents' age, especially the gratefulness I have of having a granddaughter, I think I'm just realizing that we do need to take this moment to say it to each other of why we matter, why each of us matter. And that is the Plus campaign. It's this sense of pride that everybody matters.
Oh, I'm just letting it land. Oh, that felt so good. Thank you. You matter. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a powerful mindset shift. Now, especially because you've gone through all of these different developments and stages and building these businesses. I feel like for women of color, this is oftentimes a different experience. I'll put it that way. Like to step into that role of leadership, because there's such a challenging dance or balance between trying to, speak assertively and be seen by some as, being too demanding or too bossy. Is that something you ever had to deal with, or how to prove yourself more because of Any of these things? I mean, your gender, your
Yeah,
color.
absolutely. I have so many different stories, and I have deep conversations with other female entrepreneurs and friends as they grow in their leadership roles, and as I continue to grow in my leadership
Mhm.
role. It's the sense that I think when I was younger, I remember bringing my masculine to work because the role models I had were generally men,
Yeah.
and they were the leaders in the companies that I worked at, and even female leaders that I looked up to and continue to be friends to this day
Mhm.
had a masculine energy because that is how corporate America functioned.
Mhm.
And so I brought my masculine to work in my 20s. I wasn't the funnest person to work with. I think that I wasn't my full self because I was demanding. I would, slam my fist on the table, like, why didn't you hit the deadline? And I felt uncomfortable in my body. I actually didn't like that person, but
Mhm.
I felt that that was the style to be successful at work. I started to realize, no, no, that there's not just one style, that I
Mhm.
could be myself
Mhm.
at work. And I started to integrate more of my feminine, or the what I call the soft power side of my energy in my leadership. And then when I started care.com, I decided I wanted to build a culture that was different from other cultures. And most people who've worked at Care and have moved on to work at other places or come back to work with me again or stay in touch with me have said that the culture we built at care.com was distinctly different. And so I think I redefined what leadership was in the workplace.
Mhm.
I even redefine how I believe philanthropy or networking. I do these dinners in my home here in New York called Care to Gather. I support a lot of female entrepreneurs, female authors. And I just think that we can define things in our own terms without the sense of a stereotype and allow ourselves to just be ourselves. And I think the stronger we find this inner strength of who we are, the stronger really our sense of our voice, our advocacy, our clarity of our thinking, what's in our heart, our intentions, and the more we're focused around helping people impact.
Hmm. I love that. What do you think most of, especially I would say Asian or, Asian American entrepreneurs who you come across these days, especially those who you mentor, what mistakes do you see most often that are still being repeated?
I think there's sometimes an overlap. I certainly mentor a lot of women. There's this sense that I was just talking to a group of women as my birthday dinner. People flew in and we were having dinner last night. We go deep into these conversations stylistically because I have a lot of 30-year-old really good friends. And stylistically, when I was younger, again, I would come into a meeting and think that to be heard, I had to be firm,
Hmm.
or I had to have a sense that command meant raising my voice. So of course you have to find your voice to be heard. You can't be meek and quiet. You have to really find your inner advocate to get your point across. Um, but again, how do we like stylistically change? I'd say a second is often we question when we're about to say something. We often start with an apology instead of a sense of a belief in a statement that has conviction. And it could be, again, a cultural stereotype that we put on ourselves, especially female Asian Americans. We tend to want to assume that the expectation is to be submissive in a conversation. And so sometimes, John, when I mentor young women, Asian Americans, is to go ahead and overproject.
Hmm.
What do I mean by that? That means go ahead and try in a meeting to speak a little firmer, a little louder, and then assess the temperature in the room. How are people receiving that comment?
Hmm.
And how I do this is I leave my body, I go right up to the ceiling, and I watch the room. And I become very objective about it and don't take it personally. And then I used to adjust my style and say, wow, I have to ratchet it back instead of over projecting because it now sounds like I'm angry or I sound like I'm yelling or I sound like I'm. But unless we practice that,
Hmm.
it's hard to find our voice
Hmm.
to kind of claim the space that we own to be seen and to be heard. And that takes practice. It also takes courage. It also takes a sense of it helps to have mentors in the room so that then you can practice and that gives you feedback. And then sometimes, and I've done this in my career, if I've been in environments that I don't feel is safe for me to grow, then that's not the right environment for me. I need a sense that I'm in the right environment where people are letting me experiment. They understand that this is what I'm trying to grow into my leadership. And so that was, one of the cultural things that was important for me at care.com. That people could take risk, that we could learn from each other, that we weren't looking for perfection. And so it's finding cultures like that that really support you as we grow.
Do you advise that people kind of declare or perhaps explain their intentions at another conversation in those situations? Because I can imagine being in that room, especially if you've been so used to self-silencing, to suddenly go, actually, I've got an idea, to feel very intimidating, especially if people's reactions are, let's say, not directly positive, or people kind of go like, calm down, like that kind of attitude. How do you deal with that?
What helps is to actually work with a mentor or a buddy that goes into the meeting and say, listen, I'm practicing my advocacy. I'd like to get a point in, and I think I've got great ideas, and I'd like to practice that. I'd really appreciate if it's somebody who's a leader in the room, who's senior, just like, be great if you could team me up, and let me, have the floor and have moments like that. Or you could be a buddy that says, how did you receive that? How did you feel like, did I go with the flow? Was it on point? And so sometimes having a buddy like that, who may be a peer or some slightly senior, or sometimes even junior, because, and I have that all the time, how did they receive that? Did it inspire or did it impress? I was asked, like, what, how did it motivate me? If it looked like I was too focused on trying to impress, that took away from the point. And it looked like I was a little egotistical rather than being on point. But if it, how people grandstand in meeting, but if my point was on point, I was self-aware, I was listening to the conversation, I was on point, and I spoke from the heart, and I inspired, somebody will say, wow, that was pretty incredible. And then you just learn. You just keep practicing.
I love that. Am I trying to impress? Am I holding an agenda in that conversation to be seen a certain way so I could be more liked or could be more accepted, as opposed to genuinely holding that intention, kind of coming back to what you were saying before? Am I lifting up those who are around me? Am I trying to better their lives with my ideas?
Yeah, I went to an event recently, and there was a lot of very accomplished authors, accomplished leaders. It was a very intimate, small, private event, and a lot of speakers, and it was open mic, and I was nervous. This, after me, it was my background. I public speak, and you know why? Because
Wait, hold on a second. When was
I,
this?
yeah, I was really nervous. You know why? Well, John, I wanted to take that microphone. We were talking about what was the definition of success. And there were a lot of definitions of failure. And I wanted to share some really personal story of something that I went through. And so I was debating. I was in here. You know what? I took a deep breath, and I spoke from my heart that this is really to serve what, the people that I was talking to about the definition of success, and what that meant to me was about the importance of values rather than metrics or outcome. And if I can sleep at night, that I made a decision based on values, then that made all the difference of really how I felt success was in my life. And I spoke from the heart. And then I had people come up to me after, and I was still, nervous about it, but I trusted it. And then I got up and spoke. And this is that, inspire. What was my goal overall? And so even that I go through, and I sometimes, because now even in the corporate environment, I'm speaking a lot more from my heart with a sense of love and what matters to me. And so I have to really get centered and say, okay, how can this serve everybody in the room? Will this be helpful?
I love that. You used the word inspire, and it just occurred to me, by the way, as soon as you said inspire, because inspire literally also has a double meaning of to take a breath in, right? To inspire is to breathe in. And then when you said that, you were also taking a breath in. It feels like a lot of the work that you do, because when we say, oh, go be inspirational, what do most leaders think? Oh, I gotta like drum up a speech, I gotta like I gotta like punctuate with what I'm saying, I gotta sound like Obama. Like, it's a lot, right?
A lot.
But it sounds like what you're really saying is that to be inspirational is connect deeply within. First, starting with your heart and your values.
It's a sense of authenticity, of your truth.
Tell me more about that word. You come off as a very authentic person, and I believe that's because you genuinely are.
Yeah.
But I feel like that word is thrown around a lot, right? Like, what does it mean to be authentic to you, to Sheila?
Yeah, I tend to first, I've done a lot of meditative practices, so I get a better understanding of my body never lies, right? And so my body will immediately tell me, am I wanting to make this statement that I'm about to make because it's performative? Or am I making it because I feel enough, I'm fine, but I'm actually sharing it because it's helpful to the person I'm talking to? What is the true source of the agenda that it's coming from? And, I always ask the question. I went to this conference in Turkey that this incredible 80-year-old, he's 80 plus, his name is Satish, Indian man. He's walked across the world for peace. And somebody had asked him the question, how do you know, when you're working on something, saying something, or acting on something, that it's the right thing? And he closed his eyes and he says, you have to ask your question, is the source love? Is the source love? And you have to, that's your truth. And only you will know that. No one else will know that. Only you will know that. And if you keep coming back to that, then you have to trust that if that source is truly love, I always say trust and love, then you can sleep at night. You could feel a sense of honoring yourself, that you're living the life of truth and authenticity, and your body doesn't feel uncomfortable, right? You don't have toxins in your body. You're less stressed because it's easier, right? It's often, I always say, what makes companies hard is when you do a pre-meeting for a meeting, you like say one thing at another meeting, and then you have to remember, did I say that right? Same thing in the meeting, at the next meeting, and you make your life complicated. But if you're constantly going back to what is in your heart and what is the source of that, of how I act, how I behave, how I speak, what do I do, life becomes pretty efficient. And boy, John, you get a lot of energy to get a lot of stuff done, help people, because you're just you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't have to do a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I so agree. I love what you said. I remember a few years ago when I was going through a kind of a therapy journey, my own dark night of the soul practice. I started to really dive deep. There's a lot of breakdowns. The biggest thing at the time, I was working with a teacher who was a spiritual teacher. And one of the teachings I got from her was really identifying when something is coming from ego. And ego is not what we usually think of as like this narcissistic idea. It's just the self-perception, the projection of who we want to see ourselves, how we want to see ourselves. It's a false self, as opposed to, in what you're talking about in heart and the body is really what's deeper, what's our true voice, right? And I think that this is such a difficult thing because in order for us to get to that point, there's a breakdown that we have to kind of go through. Right. There's almost like you have to have reached the top of the mountain in order to see that the top of the mountain is actually just an illusion. Right. Like you climbed all the way uptown. Now you can release it. And I'm curious because every single person I talk about this at a deeper level with has had some kind of a story. And I'm curious because I'm willing to bet that you have one where they had to truly face that dark night of the soul, when they had to truly go, but who am I really? And I'm curious if anything comes to mind.
Oh gosh, there's so many. I just wish it was just one. A story I've often shared, and I just shared this with my birthday party, and I went pretty deep. I often shared a story of public speaking for many years where, my son was at I was at the refrigerator when he just graduated from high school, and I had asked the guilty question, have I been a good mom? And his answer was, you haven't been around enough. And so fast forward, it was a dagger, John. And then fast forward, he then, at the IPO dinner, the post IPO dinner celebration with bankers and accountants and lawyers and all of that, and my team, my son, who was 22, took the microphone, literally took the microphone, looked straight at me and said, Mom, do you remember that question you asked me in high school? He repeated the story to everybody. My heart is up to here. I'm super nervous, Sean. And he said to me, I want you to know that I answered that question wrong. And I want you to know that I see the millions of families that you've impacted, and you've been a great mom. And tears running down my eyes. And when I share this in public speaking, especially in women's groups and moms, female entrepreneurs, I just did this recently in Mexico, people are brought to tears. And the deeper work, however, that I shared on my birthday, and I shared it in front of my son to actually my gratefulness of what he has taught me, is it wasn't that he said that I was a great mom that actually hit my heart. It's that he actually, with a sense of grace and forgiveness and wisdom, knew that I needed that. I needed the forgiveness and his love. And so my truth in all of that was to share with my family and him and everyone of my 22-year-old and what he has been teaching me, that adults spend their whole lives trying to figure out the power of forgiveness. And that was the gift he gave me. And so, I share these things because, like you said, in your darkest moments or even in light, sometimes, the deep meditative work and then what we call integration, especially in between conversations around therapy, you start to realize that, your truths could dig deeper around. So it doesn't have to be dark. It could be light moments. And by the way, the IPO dinner was a light moment of happiness, but I started to realize, and I really thought about it. I was like, actually, what he taught me was forgiveness. And I've forgiven myself. Like, it was a tough moment raising a child, and I was pregnant in college. My husband and I don't beat up ourselves about it anymore. But yet, I saw his anger, resentment growing up, and then there was guilt. So I carried guilt. And that shadow of guilt is something that we have to work through. And so much as forgiving ourselves and the beautiful grace of him forgiving me. So I don't know. These are things that I that's just one. I mean, I have so many of these jobs. But
We still have a bit of time.
but these are, how would I say, they're just gifts of what's brought me peace and joy in my life. I read this great book called Letting Go by Dr. Hawkins. And it's a lot of the shadow work in the map of consciousness of guilt, shame, fear, anger, desire. And really investing in finding out, what are my triggers? What are the imprints, as a child, this internal family system work that we do. And then you get to courage and understanding that then allows you to get to love, peace, and joy. And so it's really facing that, not fearing it. We all have it. We all have it. I've had friends who were like, oh my God, if I dig into this stuff, what if I find something? I'm like, you've got to trust that when we break it all away, it's all about from love. And so I'm just optimistic about this journey. So
thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
That was so powerful. Personally, I just want to say thank you for giving a shout out to IFS. Because I've done IFS training here in Canada as IFSCA, and I feel like of all the modalities I've explored, IFS by far has been the most transformative in my own life. Not even as a facilitator, just like as a client.
That's right. It's the sense of removing these judgments in our head and accepting all of who we are. Yeah. And all our parts that are imperfect, and it's okay, because we couldn't have gotten to love without suffering and pain. It's again, we work out, your muscles don't get stronger unless you go through pain. It's the same. It's the same in dealing with the shadows to go deep so that we can see the light. So
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I'll prod a little bit more on that because I'm so curious about this particular point. You said that when you were going through this work, you started seeing these, I think the word you may have used was imprints or whatever,
Mm,
parts,
yeah.
belief, conditioning, whatever it is. I think that's something very resonant for so many of the listeners who, we talk a lot about patterns and childhood conditioning and childhood patterns, especially with Asian parenting and Asian cultures. I'm generalizing to bits and pieces here, but we kind of know what we're talking about, right? So
Yes.
curious, what was your experience like, and what was that discovery journey for you?
For me, what was interesting is I grew up without the stereotypes where I had a tiger mom and and I did this at my birthday party recently. She's
I feel like I need
ambitious,
to have.
driven.
Was there a live stream of your birthday party that we could watch as a webinar? Is that a TED Talk?
I was sharing the story first starting with my mom. She was, the tiger mom. She was ambitious and driven. And so it was hard because through my childhood, it was really fighting for her approval. And I felt like I was constantly chasing that. And then my father, on the other hand, was sort of a teddy bear dad who was very nurturing. So the gift they gave me is that I didn't grow up with stereotypes. That's why I'm comfortable with men. I grew up with 4 brothers. I can speak in front of them, and so, but my mom, I always felt, that I didn't have her approval. And so I chased that. And so those imprints, as a young girl made me feel I wasn't enough. I have a very close relationship with my mother, especially her faith has made her so much stronger in her own inner work and journey. But those imprints were since I was young.
Yeah.
And so we called them little Sheilas. And so these little Sheilas pop up, and it like puts ideas in my head because we've been programmed. We call those kind of limiting beliefs. And so I use these exercises now where little Sheila's right there with adult Sheila and saying, when a thought comes in my head, and transcendental meditation, which I do twice a day, really helps me because I replace it with a mantra to clear my head and say, and then once I have clarity, I hug my little Sheila. I said, we're good. We're okay. And then you slowly, through neuroplasticity, shift those imprints and not judge them anymore. So the work isn't the judging of those imprints. It's really understanding, giving it acknowledgement and awareness, affirming it, and saying we're okay. That those were things that happened when you were a child, and you're not at fault. You're not imperfect. You don't need to worry about that anymore. We turned out okay.
That's so beautiful. It's rare that we get to talk to somebody who has this much leadership and executive experience, and it ends up talking about something so deep and so spiritually connective as
Well,
all of this. So thank you for sharing that.
but John, I thank you for asking these questions, which are awesome.
Yeah, big Asian energy, right? We're like, we're here to dive deeper.
But the stereotypes are there. And one other story that I will share is that my husband and I decided that we were going to change our parenting style. We decided, our older son Ryan, who asked me the question, who shared that IPO open mic, our style was very similar to my parents. We were firmer. I was much more of a tiger mom. My older son, he wanted to play football. I made him play basketball, the stereotypical Filipino sport. He wanted to sing. I made him play a string instrument. And then our younger son, 7.5 years later, we decided that, again, this is the beauty of the Asian American and honoring that, and realize, look, we're raising the Asian American and giving him, the choices around who he wanted to be. And he got to sing. He got to play football. And so we evolved our parenting style and really a way of learning. And that, I think, is super important as well in this inner work and this journey for everyone, especially for leaders, of the sense of the importance of evolving, right? You can come to this country, whether you're multi-generational Asian American or just arrived. I think these stereotypes, we get to talk about it. We get to ask about it. We get to question it and understand and be open to evolution because we need to. And that is the beauty of being able to appreciate each other's background and discussion of how can we build a good society together. Again, what I learned at Aspen Crown is to have that open dialogue for learning.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, for sharing your stories. Now, we have a couple minutes left. Is there anything that we haven't talked about or brought up that you would love to focus on or bring attention to?
It probably two things. I'd say Ohai, which I'm spending a lot of my energy on right now, building again. And this is similar to the Asian American journey, stereotypes, the pressures we put on kids. And Vivek Murthy, our previous Surgeon General, had said that one of the biggest things that really drives an epidemic on the next generation is a parental stress, and it's impacting them. And plus, of course, social media with Jonathan Haidt's book. So there's a lot going there. And so Ohai is really, reducing the mental load, and that we're back at it again, but very related to the pressure of mental health for Asian Americans and our work at TAF. So I just find in my journey of what I'm doing is allowing us the freedom of what's up here so that we can get to here, so that we can serve and love others. So that's my message.
I love that. And we're going to include all the materials in our show notes for anyone who's curious. And of course, if you're seeing this on social media as clips and everything like that, we'll make sure to have all that in the descriptions as well. Is there anything else that you want to bring up?
I think we're good, John.
Sheila, thank you so much for your time and generous wisdom, and so much that you have shared with us today. The vulnerability and the depth of this is amazing. We don't often get to talk to leaders who are so open and vulnerable. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
If something of this episode, as per usual, really resonated with you today, make sure to share that clip with somebody you care about. As always, our biggest belief is that when we rise together. So until next time, always bring your big Asian energy.